Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is officially October. I am so excited. It's my favourite time of the year. I love Halloween. I love autumn. I love the fact that Christmas is coming and that the clocks are going back soon. And I wanted to celebrate one of my favourite months of the year by mixing my love of weird stuff and true crime and Halloween makeup tutorials and like just create a month full of spooky inspired content. So you would have seen my first Halloween makeup tutorial go up of the year last weekend. I'd love it if you could go and check that out and give it a big thumbs up if you did. And I thought in between those kind of videos I would put in some like true crime videos, some of my favourite like paranormal stories, conspiracy theories, basically a full month of spooky videos. If you like my dating videos, they will be back as soon as October is finished, and I'm going to go hardcore on the old dating videos because I've been doing a lot of it recently. But yeah, so today, as you can probably tell by the title, today I'm talking about something that's a bit weird. I don't think I've ever seen a video about this on YouTube before, not in my subscription box anyway, but I'm going to be talking to you guys about spontaneous human combustion because I don't know about you, but I find this fascinating. Like ever since I was a little girl I remember seeing pictures of people that had spontaneously combust and I was just like fascinated in it. So I've done loads of research and I learnt loads about the subject. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about what it is, some like real life cases where this has happened, and also some theories of why this has happened. So if you don't know what spontaneous human combustion is, it's a phenomena where basically someone will just burst into flames and combust. You can find some really grim pictures of this on the internet. I'm going to put one here so you can see, but it's so bizarre and it doesn't really make any sense. I guess the spookiest thing about this is because it has happened with no like source of ignition. It's believed to have started within the human body, which is just petrifying. So I'm going to tell you a couple of cases where this has happened around the world in the past. So in 1982, a woman called Jean Lucille Safin, she was sitting in a home that she shared with her parents. I think her dad was there at the time, in Edmonton, London, and I just realised I'm so close to that right now. Like I live very close to Edmonton, which I'm like, I guess that's a really weird thing to fangirl about, but anyway. She was sitting in a wooden chair and her body suddenly became engulfed in flames right in front of her parents, and there was no explanation for this. There was a stove near her, but it was unlit, and there was no other fire damage to anywhere else in the room. Even the wooden chair she was sat on was left intact. So it was literally her body just went up in flames. Her family members did manage to put the flames out, but she had severe third-degree burns, and so she passed away later in hospital. Jean was 61 at the time, and the rest of her family were there when this happened, and her brother is said to have seen like a ball of fire explode from her stomach, so that's very interesting. Another case that was really quite recently was in 2010 in Ireland. This was the death of Michael Faherty. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, my pronunciation isn't that great. He was 71 and he passed away in his home in Galway. So he was unfortunately found with very, very severe burns and also partially cremated in his own home. His head was said to be lying next to his fireplace, but the fire was not on and there were no like accelerants or ignition of a fire anywhere on his body. The coroner could not identify the cause of death because of internal organ damage, so he actually put it down in medical notes that it fits into the category of spontaneous human combustion. And for 2010, when we've got a lot of technology and a lot more knowledge about things, that's very, very interesting that even a coroner admitted that. As I said, there was no trace of accelerants and there was no trace of foul play or murder or anything of the sort. Only the body, the ceiling above his body and the ground underneath his body was shown to have any kind of fire damage to it, so the rest of the room was remained entirely like intact, and that's very common with a lot of spontaneous human combustion cases as well. The whole room, like even if something goes up in flames, normally it would like spread everywhere, but in all of these cases it's literally just been the body, the floor beneath and the ceiling above that has been left like with any kind of like fire damage. I am going to throw something in the works here and say that critics, after looking at this case, said that an ember from the fire that he was next to could have landed on his clothing and ignited, but I don't know. for a coroner to believe that it was spontaneous human combustion in 2010, I think is quite telling. So this next one, there is actually photo evidence of the body afterwards, and that is the photo of Dr. John Irving Bentley, and his death happened in 1962, and it kind of shocked the nation because there was photographic evidence and the media apparently went wild for it, which is definitely understandable. Sorry, this is in the 1960s, just want to get my facts right. So he was 92, and his pile of ashes was found next to his walking frame in the bathroom of his home in Pennsylvania. Only his lower leg and one slippered foot was found next to the remains, so his legs kind of survived the fire, but the rest of him turned to ashes. I've just found this article from The Independent, which has also said that in Germany in 2015, a woman was sitting in a park bench and apparently just burst into a ball of flames as well, and she's at the time she was left with severe burns, fighting for her life. I don't know what happened to her, but as well that fitted into the category of spontaneous human combustion, which you can shorten down to SHC if you want to. So now I'm going to give you some of the demographics of its kind of victims, and then we can get into perhaps reasons why this has been happening. So the victims have a lot of things in common. They are all elderly, most of them actually female. It happens to more females than males. Some of them have been chronic alcoholics, which kind of makes sense if they've got a lot of, I mean, alcohol is flammable, so that could be a possibility. In most of the cases, the hands and the feet have remained like intact after the rest of the body has burst into flames. And that also makes sense. If a fire was to start here, heat rises upwards, so I guess the feet and the hands maybe don't get as burnt as the rest. So I don't know, it's just the thought of like a pile of ashes with some feet left in them, that is petrifying. In all of the cases, fire caused no damage to the rest of the property. There is normally a grey residue in the room with kind of like slime on the walls and like a really smelly ash, and that is basically, this is quite gross, that's basically like the melted fat that's left over after the body has burned, which is so grim. And also in some of the cases there has been a lighted substance that has been in contact with the body. So now we can get into some of the theories about why this has been happening. So one of the biggest theories to explain spontaneous human combustion is called the wick effect, and this was so interesting to research. It is basically like when your body acts as a candle but kind of inside out. So normally the wick of a candle is inside the wax, whereas the wick effect in this case talks about your clothing acting as the wick. This is so grim, sorry. The fat in your body kind of soaks in to your clothing because of the flame, and that keeps it burning. I hope that makes sense. I've written it down so much better than I just explained it. Partial destruction of a human body by fire when the clothing of the victim soaks up the melted human fat and acts like the wick of a candle. This means that you're going to have a really slow burn. So there have been some cases where the wick effect has been noted as cause of death. Case number 1 in 1951, a woman called Mary Reeser. She was a victim in Florida, and she apparently ignited herself accidentally with a cigarette. She maybe perhaps fell asleep, and her fat melted into her clothing and kept the fire going, basically. Investigators found melted fat in the rug by her body. Whoop. In 1988, my birth year, on the BBC, this guy called John Deehan did an experiment. He tried to give an example of how spontaneous human combustion works with the wick effect. So on telly, this is quite graphic, he wrapped a dead pig up in a blanket and ignited the blanket with some petrol and a flame, and he watched and did an experiment to see how the body burned, basically. He said as the animal burned, the more it burned, the more fat from the body leaked into the blanket and the more it kept the fire going. I'm going to read this bit out. He put the flame out a few hours later and saw the slow intense burn had turned the pig's flesh and bones into ash, and the rest of the room remained intact with minimal damage. Also the pig's feet remained intact as well, which kind of proves that this is very similar as what had happened in human cases. So the wick effect is definitely a good explanation as to why this has been happening. One question I had when reading this though was, well, the body contains an awful lot of water, so wouldn't that water in the body put the fire out? But apparently that actually helps the fat burn. There are a couple of other theories. These ones are a bit more like far-fetched. They don't really make much sense, but they are quite interesting. I thought I would keep them in here. One theory was written in 1996. A guy called John Hemer wrote in The Entrancing Flame that victims of spontaneous human combustion are loners, I quote, loners, who are said to have fallen into a trance because they're so lonely, and that kind of releases some cells in the brain which reacts and turns into hydrogen and oxygen, so that when they next inhale, even that is enough to cause a explosion and a fire in their body, which I don't know. I mean, imagine if I was so lonely I fell into a trance and then exploded on my next breath. Another guy called Larry Arnold had an interesting theory, and that was that human cells can occasionally get hit by a weird particle called a pyroton that causes a nuclear chain reaction inside the body, which basically means that stress makes people burn from the inside out, which I think if that was true, a lot of people maybe in a lot of stressful situations would have spontaneously, like, it'd be a lot more common. So no one has ever actually conclusively proven or disproven the existence of spontaneous human combustion. It's never been worked out to be true or definitely false and like a rumour. A lot of the explanations, as you can imagine, are people who have just fallen asleep with a lit cigarette or a lit pipe and that have ignited themselves that way. Or maybe some of those people could have been under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or even had a short-term paralysis where they couldn't move quick enough to escape the flame. So I hope you have found this video interesting. It's been so much fun to research, and I'm still very fascinated by it. I'd really be interested to know what your theories are, or if you guys find stuff like this interesting, please do leave me a comment down below. Please share it with your friends, it would really help me out. If there are any true crime cases or ghost stories or paranormal things you would like to see in particular, do let me know in the comments down below. I am going to be sharing with you guys some of my other favourite true crime cases very shortly in the next couple of weeks. So I hope you stay tuned, I hope you like this idea, and I will see you again soon. Mwah! Bye!